Algebra 2. This is Mrs. Metler with the first of several videos I'm going to be posting for you guys throughout this continuous learning process. We are going to start by reviewing factoring, which is a skill that we learned in Algebra 2 and we use quite a bit. And it's also something, if you plan to go on to Algebra 3, that you're going to need as well. So, there are 4 different types of factoring we learned this year. There are GCF, trinomial, difference of squares, and grouping. We're going to do a couple examples of each type, and I'm hoping that you can refer back to this video throughout this process and be able to pause it whenever you need and take notes if you would like to as well. The first type of factoring we have is greatest common factor, GCF. Greatest common factor can be a number or a variable. We have 2 examples here. I'm going to start by looking at my numbers. I have the numbers 4 and 18. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list out the things that multiply to 4 and 18 because those are factors. 1, 2, and 4 all multiply to make 4. And then for 18 we have 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. If we look at all of these factors, we're looking for the greatest one, so the biggest one. That's going to be 2 for both of them. So with that, we're going to take out a 2 in both terms. So I want you to think what times 2 would make 4x. We would obviously need a 2 here because 2 times 2 is 4, but we also need to place our x. We're going to look at 18. You can also think about 18 divided by 2 is what? And that is 9. I'm going to combine my parentheses set and get my GCF factoring. Remember, you can always distribute back to get back to your original. For the next problem, I've got a little bit more going on here. So I've got 3 different numbers, which is totally fine. And I also have some x's in all of my terms. So that's a pretty good clue that we are going to take out a number and a variable. And this first one, 18, didn't have an x, so I didn't worry about it. So I'm going to list out the things that multiply to each of these. And again, I am looking for the greatest one. Okay? That's obviously going to be 2. So I definitely need to take out a 2. With that said, I also want to look at my x's. X cubed is really 3 x's, x squared is 2 of them, and x is just 1. If you notice, I've got at least 1 x in all of these, so I'm going to take out a 2x from every single term. This is also very helpful because it kind of helps you figure out what's going to be left. Well, 2 and 2, that's going to be a 1. I have 2 x's left, so I'm going to put x squared here. 2x, 2 times 3 is 6, so I'm going to have a 3. And then I took out an x, so I have 1 left. And then 2x, 2 times 4 is 8. And then I already took out my single x, so I'm left with 2x, x squared plus 3x plus 4. And that is GCF factoring. Trinomials are next type of factoring. It's 3 terms. It's that big X box method we use quite a bit. So remember, when you are doing this, you're doing A times C at the top and then B at the bottom, and you're trying to figure out what multiplies to the top and adds to the bottom. I have the sign patterns listed there, so if you need help with your signs, you can always refer back to this for your sign patterns. So I'm going to jump right into it. I'm still doing A times C. Now, remember, we're thinking about an imaginary 1 in the front of our x squared, so 1 times 6, and then 5. You can probably think about this in your head. 6 doesn't have many factors, but if you want to list them out, that's also a good idea. You can see that 2 and 3 is what combines to make 5, so I'm going to have 2 and 3. And so what I'm really doing here is I am splitting this middle term into 2x and 3x. because 2x plus 3x is 5x. So when I go to my box to actually take out what's in common, I put my first in my first, my last in my last, and then my two middles. From here, I use my GCF skills to take out what's in common here. It's pretty easy to see that x times x is what's going to make x squared, and then I, of course, am going to have a 2 and a 3. Remember to check your box. X times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 2 is 6. So those are my factors. Remember, this is not an answer. That's an answer. Here we actually have a number in front of x squared, so I want you to think about what's going to go on the top of our big X. The bottom is going to be negative 13. The top is going to be negative 14, not negative 7. You will not get there if you put negative 7. So I have 1 and 14, 2 and 7. You're trying to make 13, so that's got to be our combination, 1 and 14. Now you just need to figure out which one's negative. Since the bottom is negative, the bigger number is going to be negative. So again, what I'm doing is I'm splitting this into two terms, and I am going to use those to create a nice, beautiful box. So I am going to put my first in my first, and my last in my last. Remember, this is not negative 14, it's negative 7. Negative 14 goes here in x. So when I take everything out, watch your negative. I'm left with x minus 7, 2x plus 1. Difference of squares is our next pattern. This one is very much based on the big X still, and you can still do it with that, but there is a special pattern here. Basically what you do is you look at the number in front, you take the square root. Since 1 is the number in front, I'm just going to have x and x, and then I look at 36. The square root of 36 is 6, so I'm going to have a positive 6 and a negative 6. That process repeats even if there's a number in front. I've got a 9 in front here, so I want to think about what the square root of 9 is. It's going to be 3, and then of course x and x. And then I want to look at what the square root of 1 is. It is 1 in itself, so I have plus and minus. If you need another example, go ahead and pause and think about this one. It would be 4x plus 3 and 4x minus 3. Last but not least, we have grouping, which is splitting everything into two groups, 4 terms. So I have an ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. I'm going to split these into two groups and then use GCF. So right away, split it. I'm going to look at my greatest common factor on this side and this side. So if you come out to the side here, you list your 5 and your 15, and remember you're listing x cubed and x squared. You're using the same process. I know I'm kind of speeding through this, but again, you can pause whenever you need to. You should see that we share 2 x's and also a 5. I'm going to be left with x minus 3. When I come over to the other side, x minus 3 has to match. That is the point of grouping. So sometimes it's good to work backwards and start with x minus 3 and find out how you could get 4x minus 12. So thinking about what is negative 12 divided by negative 3. Okay, so then you're going to combine your outsides and combine your insides. This last one puts 2 different types together, so we're going to start with grouping. Again, think about your GCFs. You have to take out an x squared, x plus 4, and then you have to take out a negative 9, x plus 4. The trick, though, when you combine these, it actually creates another special pattern. Right here, I want you to think about if this is GCF, trinomial, or difference of squares. It is difference of squares. So we are going to have to square root the 1 in front, which is just 1. So x and x square root 9, positive 3, negative 3, x plus 4. So again, pause this video, rewatch it, use it as an example, use it as a resource, and I will see you guys again in the next one.